a millionaire decided to adopt a 6-year-old girl with cancer. The next day, what happened when he took her to the hospital will make you cry. Watch until the end to see how this story unfolds. If this story interested you, subscribe to our channel. Don't forget to like this video and tell us which city you're watching us from. We'll keep going. Alexander Pierce stood at the floor-to-ceiling windows of his penthouse office, his steely gaze fixed on the glittering skyline of Manhattan. At 45, he had built an empire that stretched across continents, yet something felt hollow in his chest. The Forbes magazine on his desk featured his face on the cover, declaring him the Ice King of Wall Street, a nickname he had earned through years of ruthless business decisions and emotional detachment. His assistant's voice crackled through the intercom, interrupting his thoughts. "Mr. Pierce, the board members are waiting in the conference room for the quarterly meeting." "Tell them I'll be there in 5 minutes," he responded, adjusting his perfectly tailored Tom Ford suit. The meeting would be another victory lap. Pierce Industries had just completed its most successful quarter to date, with stocks soaring to unprecedented heights. As he gathered his papers, his eyes caught the small silver frame hidden behind his laptop. The only personal item in his minimalist office, a photograph of a young girl with pigtails and a bright smile. Sarah, his sister, forever frozen at age 8. He quickly turned the frame face down, a habit he had developed over the 20 years since her passing. The board meeting proceeded as expected, with presentations of rising profits and expansion plans. That was until Marcus Chen, his closest advisor, slipped him a tablet during the CFO's presentation. The headline made his blood run cold. 6-year-old Grace Thompson, the face of Hope's Children, hospital's latest campaign. The article detailed the story of a young girl battling the same rare form of childhood cancer that had taken Sarah. What caught his attention wasn't just the medical details, it was the girl's eyes. They held the same determined spark he remembered in his sister's. "Mr. Pierce," the CFO's voice snapped him back to reality. "Your thoughts on the Asian market expansion?" Alexander cleared his throat, his mind suddenly far from profit margins and market shares. "Continue with the presentation. I need to step out for a moment." In his private elevator, he loosened his tie, feeling constricted for the first time in years. The article mentioned that Grace was at Hope's Children's Hospital, the same institution where Sarah had spent her final days. He had avoided that place for 2 decades, donating millions anonymously but never setting foot inside. His car was waiting in the underground parking garage, David, his driver of 15 years, holding the door open. "Where to, sir?" Alexander hesitated, his finger hovering over his phone's screen. The hospital's address pulled up. Every fiber of his being told him to return to his office, to the world he understood, where emotions were liability and attachment was weakness. "Hope's Children's Hospital," he finally said, his voice barely a whisper. The drive took 23 minutes. Each minute felt like an hour as memories he had suppressed for years came flooding back. The antiseptic smell of hospital corridors, the sound of beeping machines. Sarah's voice, weak but still trying to make him laugh. The hospital hadn't changed much. The same pale blue walls, the same trying to be cheerful murals of cartoon animals. He followed the signs to the pediatric oncology ward, his designer shoes, clicking against the linoleum floors. And then he saw her. Through the glass window of the playroom, Grace Thompson sat at a small table, carefully coloring a picture. Her head was bare, like Sarah's had been, but she wore a bright yellow bandana with sunflower patterns. Despite the medical equipment attached to her, she seemed focused entirely on getting the colors just right in her drawing. A nurse approached him, clipboard in hand. "Can I help you, sir?" Alexander Pierce, the man known for his quick decisions and unwavering resolve, found himself speechless. For the first time in 20 years, he felt something crack in the carefully constructed wall around his heart. "I want to help," he finally managed to say. "I want to help her." The nurse's expression softened. "Are you interested in our donation program? We can definitely—" "No," he interrupted, his eyes still fixed on Grace. "I want to adopt her." The words hung in the air like a thunderclap in a clear sky. The nurse stared at him, her mouth slightly open, clearly trying to process what she had just heard. Alexander himself could hardly believe what he had said, but he knew with a certainty that defied logic that it was exactly what he needed to do. I'm sorry, I didn't catch your name. The nurse recovered her professional composure, though her eyes still showed surprise. Pierce. Alexander Pierce. He watched as recognition dawned on her face. Everyone in New York knew who he was, even if they had never met him in person. Mr. Pierce, adoption is a complex process. There are procedures, evaluations, and in Grace's case, she hesitated, glancing at the little girl still absorbed in her coloring. There are additional medical considerations. But Alexander was already pulling out his phone, his fingers flying over the screen. "Get me Jennifer Hayes," he barked into the device. "Tell her it's urgent." Jennifer was the best adoption attorney in New York, known for handling the most complex cases with discretion and efficiency. While waiting for the callback, Alexander did something he hadn't done in years. He entered the playroom. Grace looked up as he approached, her brown eyes curious but not fearful. She had been in the hospital long enough to be used to strangers in expensive suits visiting the ward. "That's a beautiful drawing," he said, pointing to her artwork. It was a garden filled with sunflowers, each one carefully colored in bright yellow and brown. "Thank you," she replied, her voice small but clear. "They're my favorite. Mom used to grow them in our backyard." Her eyes clouded slightly at the mention of her mother, and Alexander felt a twist in his chest. "Where is your mother now?" he asked gently, taking a seat in one of the tiny chairs that surrounded the activity table. Grace's hand stilled over her drawing. She had to go away. The nurses said she was too sick herself to take care of me anymore. The matter-of-fact way she said it, devoid of self-pity, reminded him so much of Sarah that he had to take a deep breath. His phone buzzed. Jennifer Hayes was calling back. He stepped just outside the playroom to take the call, keeping Grace in his sight through the window. "Jennifer, I need you to handle an adoption." "Yes, immediately. No, I'm not joking. I need every resource you have. Make it happen." The conversation was brief but decisive. Jennifer knew better than to argue when he used that tone. The next few hours passed in a blur of activity. Hospital. Administrators were called in, preliminary paperwork was started, and Alexander's team of lawyers descended on the hospital like a well-dressed storm. He learned that Grace had been in the hospital's care for 3 months. Her mother had disappeared shortly after the diagnosis, and no other family members had come forward. As the sun began to set, casting long shadows through the hospital windows, Alexander found himself once again sitting with Grace. She had moved on from coloring to a puzzle, her small fingers carefully fitting pieces together. "Do you like puzzles?" he asked, watching her methodical approach. "They help me think," she replied, not looking up. "When I finish one, I feel like I can finish anything." She paused, holding a piece in mid-air. "Even getting better." Alexander felt something shift inside him, like a key turning in a lock he didn't know existed. "Grace," he said softly, waiting until she looked at him. "How would you feel about coming to live with me? I have a very big house with lots of windows where you could grow sunflowers." Grace studied him with an intensity that belied her age. "Would I still have to do my treatments?" "Yes," he answered honestly, "but I would be there with you every step of the way." She considered this, her small face serious. "Can I bring my crayons and puzzles?" "You can bring anything you want. We can get more too." A small smile tugged at the corners of her mouth. "Okay," she said simply, then returned to her puzzle as if they had just discussed something as mundane as the weather. Later that night, as Alexander sat in his study reviewing the preliminary adoption papers Jennifer had rushed through, his phone lit up with messages. The board was demanding an emergency meeting. His PR team was in chaos over the rumors already spreading. His financial advisors were warning about market reactions to such an unexpected move. He ignored them all, his eyes fixed on a single photograph attached to Grace's file. In it, she was smiling despite the medical equipment surrounding her, a stuffed giraffe clutched in her arms. For the first time in decades, Alexander Pierce, the Ice King of Wall Street, felt his heart thaw. What he didn't know was that this decision would set in motion a chain of events that would challenge everything he had built, everything he believed in, and everything he thought he knew about himself. The next few weeks would test him in ways that no business deal or corporate takeover ever had. The news of Alexander Pierce's unexpected adoption spread through Wall Street like wildfire. In the gleaming headquarters of Pierce Industries, Marcus Chen watched. The stock prices fluctuate on his triple monitor setup, his usually calm demeanor showing signs of strain. The morning papers all carried variations of the same headline: Ice King melts, billionaire's surprise adoption shocks business world. This is unprecedented, muttered Victor Reynolds, the company's head of PR, pacing the conference room. He didn't even consult with us first. The media is having a field day. Marcus ignored him, focusing instead on the email that had just appeared in his inbox. It was from James Harrison, the company's largest shareholder outside of Pierce himself. The message was brief but ominous. Emergency board meeting, tomorrow, 9 a.m. Meanwhile, across town in his penthouse apartment, Alexander was experiencing a very different kind of morning chaos. Grace's hospital room had been transformed into a temporary living space until her new bedroom could be properly prepared. The sterile white walls were now adorned with her artwork, and medical equipment shared space with stuffed animals and puzzle boxes. "Mr. Pierce," called Emily, the private nurse he had hired, "Grace needs to take her morning medications." Alexander looked up from his laptop where he had been reviewing urgent company emails. Grace sat in her new window seat, already dressed in a pale blue sundress, watching the city below with fascination. "I'll do it," he said, standing up. Over the past few days, he had memorized her medication schedule, determined to be involved in every aspect of her care. As he approached with the carefully measured doses, Grace turned to him with a slight frown. "Do you think the sunflowers will really grow up here?" she asked, pressing her hand against the glass. "We're so high up." "We can create a special garden room," Alexander replied, sitting beside her. "With the right equipment and care, flowers can grow anywhere." He had already contacted the city's best botanical architects about converting the penthouse's conservatory into an indoor garden. Grace took her medications without complaint, a skill born from months of practice. "My old house had a garden," she said quietly. "Mum used to say that flowers were like people. They just need love and patience to bloom." Alexander felt the familiar tightness in his chest at the mention of her mother. The background check his team had run revealed more questions than answers about Angela Thompson's disappearance. The official story was that she had checked herself into a medical facility for treatment of her own illness, but the trail went cold after that. His phone buzzed. Another message from Marcus. "Harrison is rallying the board. You need to get ahead of this." "Emily," he called out, "Grace has her art therapy session in an hour. Could you make sure she's ready? I need to make some calls." In his home office, Alexander confronted the growing storm. The company's stock had dropped 12 points since the adoption news broke. Several major clients had requested emergency meetings to discuss stability concerns. His inbox was flooded with messages from board members, each more demanding than the last. But it was the last email that made him pause. It was from Richard Drake, his chief rival within the company and head of international operations. The message seemed supportive on the surface, expressing understanding for Alexander's humanitarian gesture. But years of corporate warfare had taught Alexander to read between the lines. Drake was positioning himself, using this moment of perceived weakness to make his move. A soft knock at the door interrupted his thoughts. Grace stood there, dressed for her therapy session, holding a drawing. "I made this for you," she said, walking over to his desk. The picture showed two figures, a tall man in a suit and a small girl, standing in a garden of sunflowers. Above them, written in careful childish letters, were the words, "My new family." Alexander felt something shift in his priorities. The board meeting, the stock prices, even Drake's scheming. All of it seemed less important as he looked at the drawing. He had built his empire on the principle that business should never be personal, that emotions were a liability. Now, watching Grace carefully place the drawing on his desk, he realized that everything was about to become very personal indeed. "Thank you," he said, his voice rougher than usual. "We'll hang this right here where I can see it every day." Grace beamed at him, then turned to leave with Emily. At the door, she paused. "Will you be home for dinner? Emily said we could have pizza if you say it's okay." "I wouldn't miss it," Alexander promised, already mentally rearranging his schedule. As the door closed behind her, he turned back to his computer, his expression hardening. He had built Pierce Industries from nothing, weathered countless attempts to take it from him, and survived every crisis the business world had thrown his way. Now he faced a new challenge, protecting both his company and his new daughter. The board meeting tomorrow would be just the beginning. What none of them knew was that Alexander Pierce hadn't become one of the most powerful men in New York by backing down from a fight. The morning of the board meeting dawned clear and bright, but Alexander's mind was elsewhere. He stood in Grace's room, watching her sleep peacefully, her favorite stuffed giraffe tucked under one arm. The morning sunlight filtered through the custom-designed blackout curtains, creating a gentle glow that made her seem even more fragile. "Her vital signs have been stable all night," Emily reported quietly from the doorway. "The new treatment protocol seems to be working." Alexander nodded, reluctant to leave. The past week had brought unexpected changes to his carefully ordered life. His morning routine now included checking Grace's temperature and listening to her chatter about her dreams over breakfast. The rigid schedule that had defined his days for decades had bent to accommodate art therapy sessions and impromptu puzzle competitions. But duty called, and Pierce Industries wouldn't run itself. In the car, David navigated through morning traffic while Alexander reviewed his strategy. The adoption had been legally expedited thanks to Jennifer's connections, but the corporate fallout was just beginning. "Sir," David's voice interrupted his thoughts. "There's someone waiting at the office entrance. I think you should see this." Alexander looked up to see a familiar figure standing by the building's revolving doors, his brother, William Pierce. They hadn't spoken in months, not since their last argument about the direction of the company. William had always preferred a more conservative approach to business, and their disagreements had grown more frequent over the years. "Keep driving," Alexander instructed. "Use the private entrance." In his office, Alexander found Marcus waiting, with a thick folder of documents. "The board members are gathering," he reported. "Harrison has been meeting with them individually all week." And Drake? Suspiciously quiet. But his assistant was seen entering Harrison's office late last night. Alexander straightened his tie, a gesture that had become almost ritualistic before major confrontations. "Time to face the music." The boardroom fell silent as he entered. 14 pairs of eyes watched him take his place at the head of the table, each gaze carrying its own mixture of concern, curiosity, or calculation. James Harrison, a silver-haired veteran of Wall Street, sat directly opposite him. "Alexander," Harrison began, his tone carefully neutral, "we've called this meeting to discuss recent events that have raised concerns about the stability of Pierce Industries' leadership." "You mean my daughter," Alexander stated flatly. "Your unexpected adoption has created uncertainty among our shareholders," Harrison continued. "The market response has been significant. Our Asian partners are particularly concerned about this sudden change in your personal circumstances." Richard Drake leaned forward, his expression a perfect mask of concern. "We're all sympathetic to your humanitarian impulses, Alexander, but the timing is problematic. With the merger negotiations in their final stages—" "My personal life has no bearing on the merger," Alexander cut in. "Doesn't it?" Drake pressed. "Our partners are investing in the Alexander Pierce they know, the focused, dedicated leader who built this company. Not," he paused deliberately, "a man distracted by personal matters." The phrase hit home, echoing words Alexander had used himself countless times when firing employees who let family issues affect their performance. The irony wasn't lost on him. Before he could respond, his phone vibrated. Emily's name flashed on the screen. His heart rate spiked. She wouldn't call during the board meeting unless... "Excuse me," he said, standing abruptly. "This is important." "More. So important than this meeting?" Harrison's voice carried a clear warning. Alexander was already moving toward the door, phone pressed to his ear. Emily's voice was tense but controlled. "Mr. Pierce, Grace's fever has spiked. The doctors want her back at the hospital for tests." He was halfway to the elevator when William caught up with him. "Alex, wait. You can't just walk out of a board." "Meeting!" "Watch me," Alexander replied, jabbing the elevator button repeatedly. "This is exactly what they're worried about," William persisted. "Oh, you're not thinking clearly. This girl, she's bringing back memories of Sarah, and it's affecting your judgment." Alexander turned to face his brother, his voice dangerously quiet. "Her name is Grace, and yes, she reminds me of Sarah. She reminds me that there are more important things than quarterly reports and stock C prices." "The company you built is at stake," William argued. "Everything you've worked for." The elevator doors opened, and Alexander stepped inside. 20 years ago, I walked away from Sarah's hospital room because a merger couldn't wait. I've regretted that decision every day since. I won't make the same mistake twice. As the doors closed on his brother's worried face, Alexander's phone buzzed again. This time it was Marcus. "Drake is making his move. He's calling for an emergency vote of confidence." Alexander closed his eyes, feeling the weight of both worlds pulling at him. In the past, his choice would have been clear. The company always came first. But now, as the elevator descended, he found himself thinking of a little girl's drawing hanging in his office, of promises made over pizza, dinner of second chances that came disguised as challenges. The board meeting wasn't over, not by a long shot. Drake's power play would have to be addressed. The merger negotiations couldn't be ignored, but right now, somewhere in his penthouse, a little girl needed him. And for the first time in his life, Alexander Pierce knew exactly where his priorities lay. The private wing of Hope's Children's Hospital hummed with quiet activity as Alexander paced the corridor outside Grace's room. Dr. Sarah Chen, the hospital's leading pediatric oncologist, studied a series of test results on her tablet, her expression carefully neutral. "The fever is a concern," she explained, swiping through charts. "But it's not uncommon during this phase of treatment. What's more interesting is the response we're seeing to the new protocol." Alexander stopped pacing. "Interesting good or interesting bad?" "Good, actually." Dr. Chen turned the tablet to show him a series of complex graphs. "Her body is responding better than expected. The cellular markers we've been monitoring show significant improvement. It's still early, but..." A small sound from Grace's room interrupted them. Alexander was through the door in seconds, finding Grace awake and trying to reach for her water glass. He helped her take a sip, noting how warm her small hand felt in his. "You left the meeting," she said, her voice slightly raspy. "Emily said it was important." "Not as important as you," Alexander replied, adjusting her pillows. He had learned more about hospital routines in the past week than he had ever wanted to know, but each new piece of knowledge felt vital now. Grace studied his face with that unnervingly adult expression she sometimes got. "Are you in trouble because of me?" "No, sweetheart. The people at my company just need to learn that some things matter more than business." He smoothed her bandana, a new one covered in purple butterflies. "How about we work on a puzzle while Dr. Chen reviews your tests?" As they fitted pieces together on her bedside table, Alexander's phone continued to buzz with messages. He ignored them all except one from Jennifer Hayes. "Urgent development regarding adoption. Call ASAP." "I need to make a quick call," he told Grace. "I'll be right outside the door." In the hallway, Jennifer's news hit him like a physical blow. "A woman claiming to be Grace's mother has come forward," she said without preamble. "She's filed a preliminary challenge to the adoption." Alexander's grip on the phone tightened. Angela Thompson abandoned her daughter at the hospital. She forfeited her rights. She claims she was suffering from severe postpartum depression, exacerbated by her own health issues. She's been in a treatment facility in Arizona, and her doctors are supporting her petition for reunification. "She left her sick child alone." Alexander's voice was steel. "No judge will..." Alex, Jennifer interrupted gently. She's the biological mother and she's seeking treatment. Courts tend to favor family reunification when possible. We need to prepare for a fight. Through the door's window, he could see Grace working. On her puzzle, her face scrunched in concentration. In just a few weeks, she had become the center of his world. The thought of losing her. Whatever it takes, Jennifer. Use every resource we have. I won't let her take Grace. Back in the room, Grace held up a completed section of the puzzle. Look, it's starting to show the rainbow. Did you know rainbows are really circles? We just can't see the whole thing from the ground. I didn't know that, Alexander said, sitting beside her. Tell me more. As Grace explained the science of rainbows, something she had learned from a hospital tutor, Alexander's phone lit up with an email from Marcus. The subject line read, "Board vote results. Urgent." He slipped the phone back into his pocket, unopened. The company could wait. Right now, he needed to learn about rainbows. Hours later, after Grace had fallen asleep, Alexander finally opened Marcus's email in the hospital corridor. The news was as bad as he'd expected. Drake had successfully convinced the board to call for a vote of confidence, scheduled for the end of the month. If Alexander lost, he would be removed as CEO of his own company. Dr. Chen approached with fresh test results, her face serious. "Mr. Pierce, we need to discuss Grace's treatment options. There's a new trial starting at Johns Hopkins that might be perfect for her case, but there's a complication." "What kind of complication?" "The trial requires participants to remain in Baltimore for at least 6 months of monitored treatment. Given the current legal situation with the adoption and your company..." Alexander looked through the window at Grace's sleeping form. On her bedside table, the half-finished puzzle showed fragments of a rainbow emerging from storm clouds. Sometimes, he realized, the hardest business decisions weren't about business at all. How soon would we need to leave for Baltimore? Dr. Chen blinked in surprise. "We, Mr. Pierce, with your company in crisis." "How soon?" he repeated firmly. "The trial begins in 2 weeks, but your board, the adoption proceedings..." Alexander straightened his shoulders, decision made. "Then we have 2 weeks to prepare. Grace's treatment comes first. Everything else is negotiable." What he didn't say was that this decision would set off a chain reaction that would reshape not just his life, but the very foundation of Pierce Industries. The next 2 weeks would test every skill he had acquired in his decades of business warfare, but this time, the stakes were infinitely more precious than mere money or power. The news of Alexander's decision to relocate to Baltimore hit Pierce Industries like a bombshell. The executive floor buzzed with whispered conversations and hurried meetings. Richard Drake moved through it all like a shark scenting blood in the water, his confident smile growing with each passing hour. In his office, Alexander faced his brother William across his desk. The morning sun cast long shadows across the space where Grace's drawing still held pride of place. "You can't be serious," William said, his voice strained. "Running the company from Baltimore? While participating in a medical trial? The board will never accept it." "The board doesn't have to accept it," Alexander replied, sorting through documents. "I'm not asking for permission. Drake has been meeting with our major shareholders. He's positioning himself as the stable alternative, the rational choice for leadership. This move will play right into his hands." Alexander looked up from his work. "Do you remember the day Sarah started her final treatment? Dad was supposed to be there, but there was a crisis at the company. He chose the company. A week later, she was gone and all his business success meant nothing." "That was different," William protested. "You're the CEO of a global corporation. Thousands of jobs depend on you. The merger can be managed remotely," Alexander interrupted. "Marcus is preparing a detailed transition plan. I'll maintain executive oversight while delegating day-to-day operations. It's temporary, Will, 6 months. If Grace survives that long," William said quietly. The temperature in the room seemed to drop several degrees. Alexander's voice was dangerously soft when he spoke. "Get out." "Alex, I'm trying to be realistic. You're risking everything for a child who might not..." "Get out." After William left, Alexander stood at his window, watching the city sprawl beneath him. The empire he had built was visible in the skyline. Pierce Industries' logo crowned 3 different buildings. Now it all felt somehow less substantial than the small girl waiting in his penthouse. His intercom buzzed. "Mr. Pierce, there's a Miss Thompson here to see you." Alexander's heart stopped. "Angela Thompson?" "Yes, sir. She's quite insistent." He barely had time to process this when his office door opened. Angela Thompson was nothing like he had imagined. She was small, with Grace's dark eyes and delicate features, but there was a hardness to her that her daughter lacked. She wore an expensive suit and carried herself with the confidence of someone used to getting her way. "Mr. Pierce," she said, closing the door behind her, "we need to talk about my daughter." "Your daughter?" Alexander's voice was ice. "The one you abandoned?" "I was ill." Angela's composure cracked slightly. "Severely depressed, suffering from a condition that went undiagnosed for years. When Grace got sick, I broke. I couldn't handle it. But I'm better now. I've been in treatment and I'm ready to be her mother again. Where were you when she cried through her first chemotherapy sessions? When she needed someone to hold her hand during the biopsies? When she—" Alexander stopped, reining in his anger. Angela stepped forward. "I made a terrible mistake, but she's my daughter. Surely you can understand wanting to make things right." "She's starting a new treatment protocol," Alexander said. "Critical weeks are ahead. She needs stability, not emotional upheaval." "She needs her mother," Angela countered. "I'm not the same person who left her. I have excellent doctors who will testify to my recovery. My lawyers are confident about the custody hearing." Alexander walked to his desk, picked up Grace's drawing, and held it out. "She made this the day after I brought her home. Do you know what she asked me? If she could bring her crayons? Not if she could see her mother again, not why you left her. She's moved forward. Maybe you should too." Angela's eyes filled with tears, but her voice remained steady. "I'll see you in court, Mr. Pierce. And I should warn you, the press would love to hear about how the great Alexander Pierce is using his wealth to keep a sick child from her reformed mother. How do you think your shareholders would react to that headline?" After she left, Alexander sat heavily in his chair. His phone showed 5 missed calls from Marcus and an email from Jennifer with custody hearing details. The wall clock ticked loudly, counting down minutes until the board meeting where he would announce his temporary relocation. A text message from Emily appeared. "Grace is asking when you'll be home. She wants to show you the new puzzle she started." Alexander looked at the city skyline again, at the empire he had spent his life building. Then he looked at Grace's drawing, with its simple depiction of family and hope. 20 years ago, he had chosen the empire over Sarah. Now the choice was his again, but this time he knew exactly what mattered most. He picked up his phone to call Marcus. It was time to put his plan into action, regardless of the cost. What he didn't know was that Angela Thompson's threat was just the beginning of a storm that would test not just his resolve, but everything he thought he knew about love, power, and redemption. The Baltimore apartment felt different from his New York penthouse, warmer somehow despite its hastily arranged furnishings. Alexander watched from the kitchen as Grace explored her new bedroom, her excited voice carrying through the hallway as she discovered each carefully planned detail. "Look, the ceiling has stars that glow in the dark," she called out, her joy momentarily making him forget the morning's headlines. The New York Times business section had been brutal. Pierce Industries in turmoil, CEO's unprecedented move, sparks market uncertainty. The stock had dropped another 15 points, and Richard Drake's carefully worded statement about maintaining stability during this transitional period had done nothing to calm investors' nerves. Emily appeared beside him, holding out a tablet displaying Grace's latest test results. "Her numbers are holding steady," she reported. "Dr. Matthews at Johns Hopkins wants to start the trial protocol tomorrow morning." Alexander nodded, his mind already running through the schedule. The hospital was a 20-minute drive away, and he had arranged for a secure office space nearby, where he could manage Pierce Industries remotely between Grace's treatments. It wasn't ideal, but it was the best compromise he could manage. His phone buzzed, Marcus calling with the daily update. "Drake is making his move," his loyal advisor reported without preamble. "He's called for an emergency shareholders meeting. Next week, the timing." "The timing is deliberate," Alexander finished. "He knows I can't leave Baltimore during the critical first phase of Grace's treatment. He's presenting a comprehensive transition plan. Several key board members are already backing him, without you there in person to counter his arguments." A crash from Grace's room interrupted the conversation. Alexander was moving before the sound had fully registered, his heart in his throat. He found Grace standing amid scattered puzzle pieces, her face pale but determined. "I'm okay," she said quickly. "Just got a little dizzy. The box was heavier than I thought." Alexander helped her to the bed, noting how she leaned against him more than usual. Emily appeared with a blood pressure monitor, her practiced movements masking her concern. "I'll call you back," Alexander told Marcus, ending the call mid-sentence. Hours later, after Grace had finally fallen asleep, Alexander sat in his makeshift home office, video conferencing with Jennifer Hayes. The custody hearing loomed just weeks away, and Angela Thompson's legal team had been aggressive in their preparations. "She's gathered an impressive array of expert witnesses," Jennifer reported. "Her to be mental health professionals, child development specialists, all testifying to her recovery and fitness as a mother. And her PR campaign is gaining traction. The reformed mother versus billionaire narrative is proving compelling to the public." Alexander rubbed his temples, fatigue seeping into his bones. "What are our options?" "We can counter with our own experts, emphasize the stability you provide, the quality of medical care. But Alex..." Jennifer hesitated. "The timing of this trial in Baltimore, it complicates things. The court might see it as you making unilateral decisions about Grace's care without consulting her biological mother. The trial could save her life. I know that, and we'll make sure the judge knows it too, but we need to be prepared for all possibilities." A soft sound drew his attention to the doorway. Grace stood there in her butterfly pajamas, looking small and uncertain. "I had a bad dream," she whispered. "We'll continue this tomorrow," he told Jennifer, ending the call. "Come here, sweetheart. Want to tell me about the dream?" Grace climbed onto his lap, something she'd started doing more frequently lately. "I dreamed about Mom," she said quietly. "She was in my old garden, but all the sunflowers were dead." Alexander held her closer, feeling her slight trembling. "It was just a dream." "Is she really coming back?" Grace's voice was barely audible. "The nurses at the hospital were whispering about it. They said she wants to take me away." The question hit him like a physical blow. How could he explain the complexity of legal battles and custody hearings to a 6-year-old? How could he promise everything would be okay when he himself was fighting on so many fronts? "Listen to me," he said, turning her to face him. "What's the most important thing right now?" "Getting better," she replied, their familiar mantra. "That's right. And what did we say about getting better?" A small smile touched her lips. "That, we do it together. Always together," he confirmed. "Everything else, we'll handle it as it comes. Right now, you need to rest for tomorrow's treatment." As he carried her back to bed, Grace's arms tightened around his neck. "I don't want to go with her," she whispered. "I want to stay with you." Alexander tucked her in, making sure her favorite stuffed giraffe was within reach. "Try to sleep," he said softly. "I'll be right here." Later, staring at his laptop screen full of urgent emails and crisis reports, Alexander thought about choices and consequences. Drake was methodically dismantling his corporate control. Angela Thompson was threatening his legal custody of Grace. The treatment trial offered hope, but no guarantees. His empire was crumbling, and for the first time in his life, Alexander Pierce found that he couldn't bring himself to care. Something more precious than stock prices and board votes now occupied the space where his ambition had once ruled supreme. He just hoped he was strong enough to protect it. The Johns Hopkins Pediatric Oncology Ward was a world unto itself, with its own rhythms and rules. Alexander had quickly learned them all. When the nurses changed shifts, which vending machines had Grace's favorite snacks, how to interpret the endless stream of medical data that now governed their lives. "The initial response is promising," Dr. Matthews said, reviewing Grace's latest results. They stood in the corridor outside her treatment room, speaking in the hushed tones that seemed natural in hospital settings. "Her body is accepting the protocol better than we anticipated." Alexander watched through the observation window as Emily helped Grace with her tablet. They had developed a routine during treatments. Puzzle games and video calls with the art therapist helped pass the long hours attached to various machines. And the side effects? Manageable so far. The fatigue and dizziness are expected. "We'll monitor her closely, but I'm cautiously optimistic." A notification buzzed on Alexander's phone. The shareholders' meeting was starting in New York. Through a secure video link, he could see the boardroom filling with familiar faces. Richard Drake sat at the head of the table, a position that should have been Alexander's. "I need to take this," he told Dr. Matthews. "Emily has my direct number if anything changes." In a small conference room down the hall, Alexander watched the corporate drama unfold on his laptop screen. Drake's presentation was masterful, laying out a vision of stability and growth that contrasted sharply with the current uncertainty. The stock had stabilized somewhat, but the damage to market confidence was significant. "While we respect Mr. Pierce's personal choices," Drake was saying, his voice smooth as silk, "the company requires consistent, focused leadership. The proposed transitional structure." A message from Marcus popped up. "He's got the votes. Harrison and the others are convinced. I'm sorry." "Alex?" Before Alexander could respond, another message appeared. This one from Jennifer Hayes. "Emergency. Angela Thompson's lawyers filed an injunction. They're challenging the medical trial authorization. Hearing in 1 hour." The walls seemed to close in slightly. Alexander loosened his tie, feeling the weight of competing crises pressing down on him. In the boardroom video feed, Drake was still speaking, his words fading into background noise as Alexander's mind raced through options. A soft knock at the door interrupted his thoughts. Emily stood there, her face concerned. "Mr. Pierce, Grace is asking for you. She says it's important." In the treatment room, Grace looked smaller than usual against the medical equipment, but her eyes were bright. "I did it," she said as he entered. "Look." She held up her tablet, showing a completed level of her puzzle game. It was one she'd been struggling with for days, the kind of challenge that required patience and persistence. "I kept trying different approaches, like you said. And finally, I figured it out." Alexander felt something shift in his perspective. Here was this tiny person, fighting battles bigger than any corporate takeover, celebrating small victories with pure joy. What were stock prices and shareholder votes compared to this? His phone buzzed again, Jennifer with courthouse details. The injunction hearing couldn't be delayed. He needed to authorize their legal response immediately. "Grace," he said, sitting beside her bed, "I need to handle something important. Emily will stay with you, and I'll be back as soon as I can." She studied his face with that uncanny perception she sometimes showed. "Is it about Mom or your company?" "Both," he admitted. "But neither is as important as you." Grace reached for her giraffe, hugging it close. "You know what my old doctor used to say, that sometimes the medicine makes you feel worse before you feel better. Maybe this is like that?" Alexander blinked, struck by the simple wisdom in her words. 20 minutes later, he sat in his temporary office, making the hardest and easiest decision of his life. The message to Marcus was brief. Execute Protocol Zero. Protocol Zero was something Alexander had created years ago, but never thought he'd use. A corporate scorched earth policy that would essentially dismantle his own position while protecting the company's core assets. It would leave him as a minority shareholder, stripped of executive power, but with enough resources to fight his personal battles. To Jennifer, he sent different instructions. "Pull everything we have on Angela Thompson's treatment facility in Arizona. Something doesn't add up." The corporate empire he'd spent his life building was slipping away, but as he walked back to Grace's treatment room, Alexander felt strangely light. He had built Pierce Industries from nothing once before. If necessary, he could do it again. What he couldn't rebuild was the trust in Grace's eyes when she looked at him, or replaced the time he had with her during these crucial months. Some choices, he was learning, weren't really choices at all. In New York, Richard Drake was about to discover that winning a corporate battle didn't always mean winning the war. And somewhere in Arizona, Angela Thompson's carefully constructed story was about to face some very uncomfortable questions. But for now, Alexander had a puzzle game to play with his daughter, and somehow that seemed like the most important victory of all. Jennifer Hayes stood in Alexander's Baltimore office, spreading documents across his desk with practiced precision. 3 weeks had passed since Protocol Zero, and the corporate world was still reeling from the aftershocks of Alexander Pierce's voluntary surrender of power. "The Arizona facility doesn't exist," Jennifer said, pointing to a series of photographs. "The address Angela Thompson listed in her court documents, it's an empty lot, has been for years." Alexander leaned forward, studying the images. "What about her medical records?" "That's where it gets interesting." Jennifer pulled out another file. "The doctor who supposedly treated her, Dr. James Morrison. He's real, but he hasn't practiced in Arizona for the past 5 years. He's been working at a private clinic in Switzerland." "So she lied about her treatment?" "Not exactly." Jennifer's expression was troubled. Someone went to a lot of trouble to create a very convincing paper trail. The documents submitted to the court are perfect forgeries. This isn't just Angela Thompson trying to reclaim her daughter. Someone with serious resources is backing her. Alexander's mind raced through possibilities. The timing was too perfect to be coincidental. Angela's reappearance, Drake's power play, the coordinated media campaign against him. "Drake," he said softly. "He's behind this." "It fits," Jennifer agreed. "He gains control of Pierce Industries while simultaneously destroying your public image with a custody battle. The reformed mother narrative was crafted to generate maximum sympathy." Before Alexander could respond, his phone buzzed with a message from Emily. "Grace's fever is back. Dr. Matthews wants to see you." "Keep digging," he told Jennifer, already moving toward the door. "Find the connection between Drake and Angela. And Jennifer, be careful, Drake plays for keeps." In Grace's hospital room, Dr. Matthews was reviewing charts with a furrowed brow. Grace lay sleeping, her face flushed with fever, looking painfully small against the white hospital sheets. "The trial protocol is working," Dr. Matthews said, quietly, "but her body is struggling with the intensity of the treatment. We need to consider adjusting the dosage." "What are the implications?" "A reduced dosage would be easier on her system, but it might slow down the overall progress. It's a balance between effectiveness and tolerability." Alexander watched Grace's chest rise and fall, remembering similar conversations about Sarah years ago. "What would you do if she were your daughter?" Dr. Matthews smiled slightly. "She is my patient, Mr. Pierce, and as her doctor, I recommend the dosage adjustment. She's showing remarkable strength, but we need to work with her body, not against." A soft knock at the door interrupted them. Emily entered with a tablet. "Mr. Pierce, you need to see this." The tablet showed a breaking news story. Questions arise about Pierce adoption process. Sources claim irregular procedures. The article quoted anonymous sources suggesting that Alexander had used his influence to bypass normal adoption protocols. "They're laying groundwork," Alexander muttered, "making me look desperate and unethical before the custody hearing." Grace stirred in her sleep, murmuring something about sunflowers. Alexander moved to her bedside, adjusting her blanket with practiced care. The world could wait. Right now, his daughter needed him. Hours later, after Grace's fever had finally broken, Alexander sat in the hospital corridor making calls. Marcus reported that Drake was systematically dismantling his remaining influence within Pierce Industries, replacing key personnel with his own people. "The Asian merger is proceeding," Marcus said. "Drake's presenting himself as the steady hand guiding the company through troubled waters. The stock has actually improved since Protocol Zero." "Let him have his victory lap," Alexander replied. "Just keep watching the money trail. Drake's not as careful as he thinks he is." A text from Jennifer interrupted their conversation. "Found something? The Arizona paper trail leads to an offshore account. You need to see this." Alexander ended the call with Marcus and opened Jennifer's encrypted file. What he saw made his blood run cold. The account linking Drake to Angela Thompson wasn't just about the custody battle. It was part of a much larger pattern of suspicious transactions dating back months. "Mr. Pierce?" Grace's voice called from her room. "Can we do our evening puzzle?" Alexander pocketed his phone, the financial documents temporarily forgotten. He had learned to navigate between two worlds, the high-stakes battle for his daughter's future and the quiet moments that made that future worth fighting for. Inside the room, Grace had already set up their latest puzzle on her bedside table. It showed a complex garden scene, full of twisting paths and hidden corners. "The nurse said my fever's gone," she reported proudly. "And look, I found all the edge pieces already." As they worked on the puzzle together, Alexander's mind kept returning to the documents Jennifer had uncovered. Drake hadn't just orchestrated a corporate takeover, he had manipulated a mother's desperation, created false medical records, and potentially violated numerous federal laws. The question was, why go to such elaborate lengths? "This piece doesn't fit," Grace said, frowning at a puzzle piece. "It looks like it should, but something's wrong." Alexander studied the piece she held, remembering Jennifer's words about perfect, forgeries and paper trails. Sometimes the most important clues were in the details that didn't quite fit. "Keep looking," he told Grace, the words carrying more weight than she knew. "The right piece is there somewhere. We just have to find it." Marcus Chen sat in his New York office well past midnight, surrounded by financial reports and transaction records. 20 years of working with Alexander had taught him to trust his instincts, and right now those instincts were screaming that something was very wrong with Pierce Industries' books. His secure phone buzzed, Alexander's private line. "Tell me you found something," his former boss said without preamble. "Drake's been clever, but he got sloppy in the details," Marcus replied, pulling up a spreadsheet. "The Asian merger. It's not what it seems. The partnership he's arranging isn't with our usual associates. He's created a complex web of shell companies, all leading back to a single holding corporation in the Cayman Islands. Who owns the holding corporation? That's where it gets interesting. On paper, it's owned by a trust, but I've traced the beneficiaries. One of them is a private medical research facility in Switzerland." There was a moment of silence on the line. "The same facility where Dr. Morrison works?" "Exactly. Drake's not just orchestrating a takeover. He's trying to acquire specific medical patents and research data. The merger is just a cover." In Baltimore, Alexander paced his apartment's living room, pieces of the puzzle finally falling into place. "The trial Grace is participating in. Check who owns the original research." The sound of rapid typing came through the line. "Give me a minute." "Got it." The preliminary studies were conducted by a small biotech firm that was recently acquired by... Oh, the same Swiss facility. "Yes. Alexander, what's really going on here?" Before Alexander could respond, a soft voice interrupted him. "Daddy, I had another bad dream." Grace stood in the hallway clutching her giraffe. Despite the late hour, she looked alert, almost worried. "You're doing your serious phone voice," she observed. "Is something wrong?" "Everything's fine, sweetheart," Alexander assured her, covering the phone. "Just some business stuff. Want some warm milk?" In the kitchen, while Grace sipped her milk at the counter, Alexander's mind raced through implications. Drake hadn't targeted him randomly. He had orchestrated this entire situation, from the corporate takeover to Angela Thompson's reappearance, all to gain control of a specific medical research program. "The clouds look weird," Grace said, pointing at the kitchen window. The city lights reflected off low-hanging clouds, giving them an otherworldly glow. "Like they're trying to tell us something." Alexander looked at his daughter, really looked at her. The trial protocol had been showing remarkable results. Her latest tests showed improvement that Dr. Matthews had called unprecedented. What if that was the real story here? Back in his office after tucking Grace into bed again, Alexander connected with Jennifer through a secure video call. Marcus was still on the phone line. "The Swiss facility," Alexander said. What exactly are they researching? Jennifer's image flickered as she pulled up files. Cutting-edge genetic therapies focusing on... She paused, her eyes widening. They're working on the same type of cancer Grace has. Their preliminary results suggest they've developed a treatment that could revolutionize the entire field. And make billions in the process, Marcus added. The market for this kind of breakthrough would be enormous. Drake figured it out, Alexander said softly. He traced Grace's acceptance into the trial program back to the Swiss research. He's not just after Pierce Industries. He's after the treatment protocol itself. The corporate takeover, Angela Thompson. It's all been about gaining control of this research. But why involve Angela at all? Jennifer asked. Because he needs Grace out of the trial program, Alexander realized. If the current trials succeed, the Swiss facility's treatment becomes the standard protocol. But if he controls both the research and Pierce Industries, he could bury the current results and release his own version of the treatment, Marcus finished. The profits would be staggering. Grace's voice drifted down the hallway. She was singing softly to herself, an old lullaby Emily had taught. Her. The sound grounded Alexander, reminding him what was really at stake. Jennifer, how soon can you get this evidence to the SEC and the Medical Ethics Board? I'll need a day to compile everything properly. But Alexander, Drake's lawyers, we'll fight this tooth and nail. Let them, Alexander's voice was steel. He didn't just come after my company. He came after my daughter's future. Time to remind him why they called me the Ice King. After ending the calls, Alexander stood in Grace's doorway, watching her sleep. The moon cast gentle shadows across her peaceful face, and for a moment, he could almost forget the storm that was about to break. Almost, but not quite. Because tomorrow would bring a battle unlike any he had fought before, not for money or power, but for something infinitely more precious. And this time, Alexander Pierce wasn't just fighting for his company's survival. He was fighting for his daughter's life itself. The morning dawned grey and cold in Baltimore, matching Alexander's mood as he reviewed Jennifer's final report. The evidence against Drake was damning. A meticulously documented trail of shell companies, falsified medical records, and illegal financial transactions. But what caught his attention was a detail buried in the footnotes. The Swiss facilities, research, he said into his secure phone. You're sure about these dates? Absolutely, Jennifer replied. Their breakthrough came exactly 2 weeks before Grace was accepted into the trial program. But here's the interesting part. They weren't looking for this specific treatment. They stumbled onto it while researching something else entirely. A lucky accident, Alexander mused, remembering Grace's words about pieces that didn't quite fit. Not lucky, inevitable. The research team had been following a different protocol, but one of their control groups showed unexpected results. The kind of results Grace is showing now. A knock at his office door interrupted them. Emily entered, her face concerned. Mr. Pierce, Dr. Matthews needs to see you immediately. It's about Grace's latest test results. Alexander's heart skipped a beat. I'll call you back, he told Jennifer, already moving toward the door. In Dr. Matthews' office, the atmosphere was tense. The doctor sat behind his desk, surrounded by charts and test results, his expression unreadable. Mr. Pierce, he began, we've detected something unusual in Grace's latest blood work. Alexander's world narrowed to a pinpoint. Is she getting worse? No, quite the opposite. Dr. Matthews turned his computer screen, showing a complex series of graphs. Her response to the treatment isn't just positive, it's unprecedented. The cancer markers are dropping at a rate we've never seen before. It's as if what? As if her body was specifically designed to respond to this treatment protocol. Dr. Matthews leaned back, studying Alexander carefully. Mr. Pierce, what do you know about Grace's biological father? The question caught Alexander off guard. The adoption records listed him as unknown. Angela Thompson never provided any information. I think it's time we did some genetic testing, Dr. Matthews said. There's something in Grace's genetic makeup that's making this treatment extraordinarily effective. If we can understand why... A commotion in the hallway interrupted them. Emily burst in, her usual composure shattered. "Mr. Pierce, Grace is gone." The world tilted sideways. Alexander was on his feet and moving before the words had fully registered. Grace's room was empty, her bed neatly made, her beloved giraffe sitting alone on the pillow. "Security cameras," he barked at the nursing staff already gathering. "Where are the security feeds?" The hospital's security office quickly pulled up the footage. Alexander watched, his heart in his throat, as the morning's events unfolded on screen. Angela Thompson, accompanied by two men in suits, entering the pediatric ward. A brief conversation with a nurse who clearly recognized her. Grace, still in her pajamas, being led away while Emily was distracted with another patient. "They had papers," the floor nurse explained, wringing her hands. "Court orders showing Mrs. Thompson had temporary custody. Everything looked official." Alexander's phone buzzed. "Jennifer." "Drake moved faster than we expected," she reported. "He got a judge to issue an emergency custody order this morning. Angela Thompson is listed as having temporary physical custody pending the final hearing. How long until you can get it overturned?" "At least 48 hours, maybe longer." "Alex, there's more. The Swiss facility just announced a major press conference for tomorrow morning. They're going to reveal their new treatment protocol." Alexander looked at Grace's empty bed, at the stuffed giraffe she would never willingly leave behind. Where would Drake take her? According to the custody order, she's supposed to remain in Baltimore. No. Alexander's voice was ice. Drake needs her away from this trial program. He'll want her somewhere he can control access to her treatment. Somewhere. Marcus. He quickly dialed his former CFO. "The Swiss facility, do they have any affiliated hospitals in the US?" "Checking." "Now," Marcus replied. The sound of rapid typing filled the line. "Yes, one. A private medical center just outside Philadelphia. It opened 6 months ago, fully staffed, but not yet accepting patients, almost as if they were waiting for something specific." Alexander was already moving toward the exit. "Get me everything you can on that facility. Security layouts, staff schedules, everything." "Alexander," Jennifer's voice was careful, "if you violate the custody order, Isun..." "They're not taking her for custody," he cut in. "They're taking her for her genetic code. Drake doesn't want Grace. He wants the key to her miraculous response to the treatment, and he's willing to sacrifice her current treatment protocol to get it." In the parking lot, David already had the car running. "Philadelphia," Alexander instructed, sliding into the back seat. "Fast as you can." His phone buzzed. One more time. An email from Richard Drake. Himself. The subject line read simply, "A business proposal." Alexander opened it, his jaw clenching as he read. Drake was offering a deal, full custody of Grace in exchange for Alexander's remaining shares in Pierce Industries and his silence about the Swiss research program. Looking out the car window at the Baltimore skyline receding behind them, Alexander thought about choices and consequences. Drake had calculated everything perfectly, except for one crucial factor. He had assumed Alexander Pierce was still the man who would choose his company over a child's life. That man had died the day he met Grace. "David," he said quietly, "call Jennifer. Tell her to release everything to the SEC, and then call Dr. Matthews. I need him to explain exactly what stopping Grace's current treatment protocol could do to her. It's time to show Drake what happens when someone threatens my daughter." The private medical facility outside Philadelphia looked more like a fortress than a hospital. High walls surrounded the complex, with security cameras tracking every approach. As David parked in a secluded spot overlooking the entrance, Alexander studied the building's layout on his tablet. "The security system is top tier," Marcus reported through their secure line. "But there's a vulnerability. They're running everything through a centralized control hub. If we can access it..." "Already on it," a new voice joined the call. William Pierce, Alexander's brother, spoke with the confidence of someone used to handling sensitive technical operations. "Give me 20 minutes." Alexander raised an eyebrow, surprised by his brother's involvement. "Will?" "You're not the only one who remembers, Sarah," William said simply. "I'm not letting history repeat itself." Inside the facility, Grace sat in a sterile examination room, clutching the new stuffed animal Angela had given her, a pink rabbit that felt wrong in her hands. She missed her giraffe, missed Emily, missed the comfortable routine of her treatments with Dr. Matthews. Most of all, she missed Alexander. "Everything will be fine, sweetheart," Angela said from beside her, but Grace noticed how her mother's smile didn't reach her eyes. "The doctors here just want to run some tests." "I want my real doctor," Grace said firmly, "and I want my daddy." Angela flinched at the word daddy, but before she could respond, Richard Drake entered the room. He wore an expensive suit and a practiced smile that reminded Grace of a documentary she'd watched about predators. "How's our special patient?" he asked, his voice smooth as oil. "The doctors are very excited to meet you, Grace. You're going to help us make history." Grace said nothing, remembering how Alexander had taught her that sometimes silence was the strongest response. She watched Drake and her mother exchange glances, saw the way Angela's hands twisted nervously in her lap. Outside, Alexander received the signal he'd been waiting for. "Security systems are compromised," William reported. "You'll have 7 minutes before the backup generators kick in." "The SEC filing is ready," Jennifer added. "One word from you and Drake's entire operation goes public. The Medical Ethics Board is standing by as well." Alexander checked his watch. Grace had already missed one treatment in her protocol schedule. Dr. Matthews had been clear. Disrupting the carefully calibrated program could have serious consequences. "Start the countdown," he instructed William. "Jennifer, release everything the moment I'm inside. Marcus?" Drake's board members are about to receive some very interesting information about their CEO's extracurricular activities. And Alex, good luck. The facility plunged into darkness exactly as planned. Emergency lights cast eerie shadows as Alexander moved through the corridors, following the path William had mapped out. Years of corporate maneuvering had taught him to move silently, to blend into shadows when needed. He found Grace's room just as a doctor was preparing to draw blood. In the confusion of the power outage, no one noticed him slip inside. No one except Grace, whose face lit up like a sunrise. "Daddy!" she cried, launching herself into his arms. Angela Thompson jumped to her feet, but Alexander was already moving, Grace secure in his embrace. In the corridor, he heard Drake's voice barking orders, growing more frantic as reports of the SEC filing and board revelations reached him. "Stop them!" Drake's command echoed through the facility. "Whatever it takes, that girl cannot leave." But Alexander Pierce hadn't spent decades as a corporate shark without learning how to move through dangerous waters. Every escape route had been planned, every contingency considered. Within minutes, he and Grace were in David's waiting car, speeding back toward Baltimore. "My giraffe," Grace remembered suddenly, her voice trembling. "Emily has it," Alexander assured her. "She's waiting for us at the hospital with Dr. Matthews. We need to get you back to your regular treatment." Grace leaned against him, her small body shaking slightly. "I knew you'd come," she whispered. "The doctors there were scary. They kept talking about my genetic profile and research protocols." Alexander held her closer, anger burning cold in his chest. His phone buzzed with updates. Drake was being escorted from the Pierce Industries building by security. The SEC had frozen all associated accounts. The Swiss facility's press conference had been cancelled amid allegations of ethical violations, but none of that mattered as much as the little girl in his arms, humming softly to herself as Baltimore's familiar skyline appeared on the horizon. They had won, but Alexander knew the victory wasn't in destroying Drake's schemes or saving Pierce Industries' integrity. The real victory was in keeping a promise, the promise he'd made to Grace and to himself that nothing would ever separate them again. What he didn't know was that this day would mark not just an ending, but a beginning. Because sometimes the greatest transformations come not from the battles we fight, but from the people we fight them for. The days following Grace's rescue brought a whirlwind of changes. Dr. Matthews had immediately resumed her treatment protocol, and the results continued to astound the medical team. But it was the emotional healing that proved most remarkable to watch. "The sunflowers are growing," Grace announced one morning, pressing her face against the window of her hospital room. The botanical team had installed a special growing system that allowed her to watch her very own sunflower garden flourish day by day. Alexander looked up from his laptop, where he'd been reviewing the latest updates from Jennifer. The legal aftermath of Drake's scheme had sent shockwaves through the corporate world. "They're getting taller every day, just like you." "Emily says they're reaching for the sun," Grace continued, her voice stronger than it had been in weeks. "Like how I'm reaching for getting better." The door opened, and Dr. Matthews entered with his usual quiet efficiency. "Good morning, Grace. Ready for your checkup?" As the doctor performed his examination, Alexander noticed something different about his daughter. The fear that had lingered in her eyes since the Philadelphia incident was fading, replaced by her natural curiosity and determination. "Your numbers are extraordinary," Dr. Matthews said, reviewing her latest results. "The genetic factor we identified, it's almost as if your body was waiting for this specific treatment." "Like a key finding its lock?" Grace asked, using the metaphor Alexander had taught her for understanding complex things. "Exactly like that," the doctor smiled. "You're teaching us as much as we're helping you." Later that afternoon, William visited, bringing a special gift, a custom-made puzzle featuring photos of Grace's sunflowers. "I thought you might enjoy this," he said, somewhat awkwardly. It was the first time he'd visited since helping with the rescue. "Uncle Will," Grace's face lit up. "Did you see my garden? The tallest flower is named Sarah, after Daddy's sister. He told me all about her." William's eyes met Alexander's over Grace's head. Decades of unspoken grief and guilt passed between them in that glance. "Sarah would have loved your garden," William said softly. "She always said flowers were the earth's way of smiling." As Grace set up her new puzzle, Alexander and William stepped into the hallway. "The board wants you back," William said without preamble. "Drake's replacement is temporary. They've seen the true value of your leadership now." Alexander watched through the window as Grace carefully sorted puzzle pieces, her face scrunched in concentration. "The company was never just about profit for you, was it?" William continued. "Even back then with Sarah, you were trying to build something that could help people." "I lost my way," Alexander admitted. "Got caught up in the power, the competition. It took Grace to remind me why I started Pierce Industries in the first place." "The medical research division is being completely restructured," William reported. "The board wants to focus on pediatric treatment development. They're calling it the Grace Initiative." Inside the room, Grace had convinced Emily to join her puzzle-solving effort. The nurse sat cross-legged on the floor, helping to sort edge pieces, while Grace directed the operation with cheerful authority. "She's really going to be okay, isn't she?" William asked, his voice thick with emotion. "Better than okay," Alexander smiled. "Dr. Matthews says her response to the treatment is still accelerating, but it's more than that. She's teaching everyone around her something important." "What's that?" "That healing isn't just about medicine. It's about love, hope, and the courage to keep reaching for the sun, no matter how tall the flowers grow." A small commotion from the room drew their attention. Grace had found a special piece in her puzzle, a hidden photograph of Sarah that William had included. She held it up to the light, studying it with intense interest. "Daddy," she called, "come see. Aunt Sarah is smiling just like my sunflowers." As Alexander rejoined his daughter, helping her place the special piece in its proper spot, he felt something shift in the universe. The past and present merged in that moment, healing old wounds even as new hope bloomed. William watched from the doorway, seeing not just his brother and niece, but the future of Pierce Industries taking shape, in a way none of them had expected. Sometimes the greatest corporate transformations came not from boardroom decisions, but from the simple wisdom of a child who understood that every puzzle piece, no matter how small, had its perfect place. The afternoon sun streamed through the window, casting warm light on Grace's garden. The sunflowers turned their faces upward, reaching for the sky, while below, a family continued their own journey of growth and healing, one piece at a time. The morning quiet of Grace's hospital room was interrupted by an unexpected knock. Alexander looked up from their shared breakfast of pancakes, specially prepared by the hospital chef, who had taken a particular liking to Grace, to find Angela Thompson standing in the doorway, looking uncertain and smaller than he remembered. Grace's hand tightened around her fork, but she didn't speak. The past weeks had taught her strength in silence. "May I come in?" Angela asked, her voice barely above a whisper. Alexander looked at Grace, letting her make the decision. She gave a small nod, and Angela stepped into the room, clutching her purse like a shield. "I've been in therapy," she said, addressing both of them. "Real therapy this time, not the fake program Drake set up. My doctors thought it was important for me to come here, to tell you both the truth." She pulled a chair close to Grace's bed, but not too close, respecting the invisible boundary her daughter had created. "What Drake did was wrong. What I did was wrong. He found me at my lowest point and manipulated my guilt, my fear. But that's no excuse. I should have been stronger." Grace studied her mother's face with that penetrating gaze that sometimes made her seem older than her years. "Were you really sick?" she asked finally. "Yes, sweetheart, not in my body but in my heart and mind. When you got sick, I couldn't handle it. I broke inside. But instead of getting help, I ran away. That was the biggest mistake of my life." "Bigger than helping that bad man try to take me away?" Angela flinched at the direct question. "Yes, because if I hadn't run away first, he never would have been able to use me like that. I would have been here being the mother you deserved." Alexander watched the exchange carefully, ready to intervene if Grace showed any sign of distress. But his daughter continued to surprise him with her resilience. "Daddy says sometimes people make mistakes because they're hurting," Grace said, glancing at Alexander for confirmation. "He says the brave thing is admitting the mistake and trying to fix it." "Your daddy is a wise man," Angela smiled sadly. "That's why I'm here. Not to disrupt your life or cause more pain, but to tell you that I'm stepping back legally. No more custody fights. No more interference. You belong with your father, Grace. He's given you what I couldn't: strength, stability, and unconditional love." Tears slipped down Angela's cheeks, but she made no move to wipe them away. "I'm going to continue my therapy, work on becoming someone you might want to know someday, but only if and when you're ready." Grace was quiet for a long moment, processing this. Then she reached for her bedside drawer and pulled out a drawing. "I made this yesterday," she said, holding it out to her mother. The picture showed Grace's sunflower garden, but with something new, a small figure standing at the garden's edge, looking in. Angela took it with trembling hands. "That's you," Grace explained. "Emily helped me add it. She says gardens need time to grow, and so do people. Maybe when you're better you can see my real sunflowers." Angela pressed the drawing to her heart, unable to speak. Alexander felt something shift in his own heart. Not forgiveness exactly, but understanding. The woman before them wasn't the same person who had conspired with Drake. She was someone trying to find her way back to the light, just like Grace's beloved sunflowers. "We have a standing garden viewing every Thursday afternoon," he said quietly. "When your doctors think you're ready, you're welcome to join us. Supervised visits starting. Small." "Thank you," Angela whispered. "Both of you." After she left, Grace turned to Alexander with serious eyes. "Is it okay that I gave her the drawing, even after everything?" Alexander helped her adjust her pillows, buying time to find the right words. "You once told me that flowers just need love and patience to bloom. Maybe people are the same way. Your mother made terrible mistakes, but she's trying to grow now. That takes courage." "Like my sunflowers," Grace nodded. "Even when it's cloudy, they keep growing." She paused, thinking. "Daddy, do you think Aunt Sarah would be proud of us for helping people grow?" Alexander looked at his daughter, this miraculous child who had taught him more about healing and forgiveness than all his years in business ever had. "Yes, sweetheart, I think she'd be very proud." Outside the window, Grace's sunflowers turned their faces to the sun, reaching ever upward. And in the quiet of the hospital room, father and daughter continued their shared breakfast, knowing that sometimes the greatest growth happens not in gardens, but in hearts willing to give second chances. The autumn breeze rustled through the hospital's rooftop garden, now transformed into a vibrant oasis of colors. Grace's sunflowers stood tall against the Baltimore skyline, their golden faces tracking the sun's journey across the sky. But today was special. It was Grace's last day of treatment. "All your tests are showing complete response to the therapy," Dr. Matthews explained, reviewing the final results with Alexander. "Her genetic predisposition to the treatment protocol has essentially revolutionized our understanding of personalized medicine." Grace sat in her favorite garden chair, wrapped in a cozy blanket despite the mild weather, her trusted giraffe in her lap. The past months had changed her. She was stronger now, her face fuller, her eyes bright with health rather than fever. "Does this mean I can go to real school?" she asked, having discussed this possibility extensively with both her father and her doctors. "I think you're ready," Dr. Matthews smiled. "Though you'll need regular checkups, of course, and your father has already arranged for the school nurse to have specialized training." Alexander watched his daughter's face light up at the news. The exclusive private school he'd chosen had been eager to accommodate Grace's needs, especially after the Pierce Foundation's generous donation to their medical facilities. "The Grace Initiative is already helping other children," Dr. Matthews continued, showing them data on his tablet. "The insights we've gained from your treatment are being applied to develop personalized protocols for other patients. You've helped create a blueprint for the future of pediatric cancer care." Grace considered this with her characteristic thoughtfulness. "Like how each flower in the garden needs different care to grow best?" "Exactly like that," Alexander agreed, constantly amazed by his daughter's ability to understand complex concepts through her own unique lens. The door to the rooftop opened, and familiar faces began to arrive for the celebration they'd planned. Emily, who had become more family than nurse. William, carrying a large wrapped package that obviously contained a new puzzle. Jennifer Hayes, whose legal brilliance had helped secure not just Grace's adoption, but the patents for the new treatment protocols. Marcus, who had successfully restructured Pierce Industries around its new medical research focus. And standing slightly apart, Angela Thompson. The supervised visits had gradually evolved into a careful relationship built on honesty and respect. There were boundaries. She held a small pot containing a miniature sunflower, Grace's favorite variety. "I thought you might want to start a garden at home," she said softly, presenting the plant to her daughter. Grace accepted the gift with a smile. "It can be the first flower in my new school's garden. Daddy says I can help design it." Alexander watched the interaction with quiet satisfaction. The healing that had taken place wasn't just physical. It had touched everyone in Grace's orbit, transforming relationships and priorities in unexpected ways. William stepped forward with his package. "This is something special," he said as Grace eagerly unwrapped it, a reminder of how far we've come. The puzzle box revealed a photographic collage, Grace's sunflower garden through the seasons, from the first tentative sprouts to today's magnificent blooms. Mixed among the flowers were snapshots of her journey, her first day with Alexander, quiet moments during treatment, celebration of small victories, and countless shared smiles. "Look, Daddy," Grace pointed to one particular image. "That's the day we learned my special cells could help other kids. Remember what you said?" Alexander remembered perfectly. It was the day they'd discovered that Grace's unique genetic response to the treatment could serve as a template for helping other children. He had told her that sometimes the most beautiful flowers grow from the hardest soil, and that her challenge might become a gift for others. "Doctor," Matthews cleared his throat, drawing everyone's attention. "I have one more piece of news," he said. "The medical board has officially named the new treatment protocol. They're calling it the Grace Protocol." The gathered group burst into applause, but Grace looked thoughtful. "Can we call it the Sarah Grace Protocol instead?" she asked, looking at her father. "Since Aunt Sarah helped us find each other." Alexander felt tears prick his eyes as he nodded, unable to speak. William placed a hand on his brother's shoulder, both of them remembering the sister whose loss had set this entire journey in motion. As the celebration continued, Grace moved through the garden, touching each sunflower gently, saying goodbye to her daily companions. Tomorrow would bring new adventures, a new home closer to her school, new friends, new challenges. But the lessons learned in this garden would go with her, that healing takes many forms, that love grows in unexpected places, and that sometimes the biggest transformations come from the smallest seeds of change. The sun began to set over Baltimore, painting the sky in brilliant oranges and pinks. Grace's sunflowers turned one last time to catch the fading light, standing tall and proud, just like the little girl who had taught an entire hospital about the power of hope and the strength of a child's heart. The first day of school dawned bright and clear, with autumn leaves dancing in the crisp morning air. Grace stood in front of her bedroom mirror, adjusting her new uniform with careful precision. The school's crest featured a rising sun, fitting, Alexander thought, for his sunshine girl. "Are you sure you want to do this?" he asked, watching her pack her favorite books into a brand new backpack. "We could wait another week or try half days first." Grace gave him the patient look she'd perfected over the past months. "Daddy, we talked about this. Dr. Matthews said I'm ready. And look." She pulled up her sleeve to show off the special medical alert bracelet they'd had custom made, featuring both emergency information and a tiny sunflower charm. "I have everything I need." The drive to Greenwich Academy was quiet, both father and daughter lost in their thoughts. Alexander couldn't help but remember another first day, not so long ago, when he'd walked into Hope's Children's Hospital and found his whole world changing. The school's grounds were impressive, with manicured lawns and historic buildings. But what caught Grace's attention was the newly constructed garden space near the entrance, her garden waiting to be born. "Ms. Rodriguez is expecting you in the science lab after classes," Alexander reminded her. "She's excited about your ideas for the garden design." Grace nodded, clutching her backpack straps. For all her brave words, he could see the nervousness beneath her confident exterior. What if the other kids ask about everything? Alexander knelt down to her level, straightening her collar. "Then you tell them whatever you feel comfortable sharing. Remember what we practiced?" "My name is Grace Pierce," she recited. "I love puzzles, sunflowers, and science. I spent some time in the hospital, but now I'm better, and I'm helping doctors learn how to help other kids get better too." "Perfect." He tucked a stray curl behind her ear. "And if you need me, you're just a phone call away," she finished. "And Emily is having lunch with me today, and Nurse Jenny has all my information, and I have my bracelet." She touched the sunflower charm. "I'm ready, Daddy, really." As if to prove her point, another little girl approached them, wearing the same uniform. "Hi, I'm Sophie. I love your bracelet. Do you want to walk in together?" Grace looked at her. Father one last time received his encouraging nod and turned to her new classmate with a bright smile. "Hi, Sophie. I'm Grace. Do you like puzzles?" Alexander watched them walk toward the building, heads bent together in conversation. His phone buzzed. A message from William about the morning's board meeting. The Grace Initiative was expanding faster than anyone had anticipated, with research centers across the country adopting the protocol. A familiar voice behind him said, "She's going to be fine, you know." He turned to find Angela, standing a respectful distance away. Their carefully negotiated arrangement included her involvement in Grace's education within set boundaries. Today was one of her approved days to participate in drop-off. "I know," he replied. "It's just hard to let go even a little bit," she finished. "I understand, but she's stronger than any of us ever imagined." They watched together as Grace and Sophie disappeared into the building, their laughter floating back on the morning breeze. The garden space caught the early sun, empty now, but full of potential, like Grace herself had been that first day in the hospital. "The contractors are coming tomorrow to start preparing the soil," Alexander said. "Grace has the whole design planned out, sunflowers in the center naturally, but also other flowers that attract butterflies and bees. She wants it to be a teaching garden." "Teaching what?" "That beautiful things can grow anywhere with the right care and patience." He smiled slightly. "And that every flower, like every person, blooms in their own time." Angela nodded, understanding the deeper meaning. Their own relationship had evolved into something neither of them had expected. Not friendship exactly, but a shared commitment to Grace's well-being that transcended their past conflicts. As they turned to leave, Alexander's phone buzzed again. This time it was a message from Grace herself, sent from her new school-approved tablet. "My teacher has a puzzle on her desk, and Sophie likes sunflowers too. Love you, Daddy." 3 simple sentences that contained a world of promise. Alexander typed back a quick reply, then looked once more at the empty garden space. By spring it would be transformed, just as all of them had been transformed by a little girl who had taught them the true meaning of growth, healing, and unconditional love. The morning sun climbed higher, warming the autumn air. Somewhere inside Greenwich Academy, Grace Pierce was beginning her new adventure, carrying with her the strength of sunflowers, the wisdom of puzzles, and the love of a family that had been forged in the most unexpected circumstances. And in that moment, Alexander knew with absolute certainty that sometimes the happiest endings were really just beautiful beginnings in disguise. Spring arrived in a burst of color at Greenwich Academy. The garden Grace had designed now bloomed in full glory, attracting not just butterflies and bees, but also curious students and teachers who found themselves drawn to its thoughtful design and peaceful atmosphere. "And this section," Grace explained, to a group of younger students gathered around her, "is where we plant new sunflowers every few weeks. That way we always have some blooming." Her voice was confident, a far cry from the shy girl who had started school months ago. Alexander watched the impromptu tour from the garden's edge, where he'd arrived early for the afternoon's special ceremony. Grace had flourished at Greenwich, her natural intelligence matching her newfound physical strength. The Sarah Grace Protocol had been officially adopted by major hospitals worldwide, and today they were celebrating its first year of success. "She's quite the teacher," Dr. Matthews said, joining Alexander. "Just like her father." Alexander raised an eyebrow. "I wasn't aware I had a reputation for teaching." "No? Ask any of the medical researchers working with the Grace Initiative. They say your daughter's approach to explaining complex concepts has revolutionized how we communicate with young patients." It was true. Grace's way of relating medical processes to gardens and puzzles had been adopted by pediatric wards across the country. Her simple explanations made difficult treatments less frightening for children and their families. The garden's central pathway filled with arriving guests, medical professionals, board members, fellow patients, and their families. William arrived with Marcus, both carrying folders full of the latest initiative reports. Emily, who now supervised the school's enhanced medical program, guided a group of visiting nurses through the garden's layout. Grace concluded her tour and rushed to Alexander's side, her school uniform slightly dusty from gardening. "Did you see?" Tommy finally understood about cell regeneration when I showed him how the bees help flowers make new flowers. "Very impressive, Professor Pierce," he smiled, brushing soil from her skirt. "Ready for your speech?" Her expression turned. "Serious?" "I think so. I added something new this morning. Is it okay if I surprise you?" "Your surprises are always worth waiting for." The ceremony began with traditional speeches, hospital administrators praising the protocol's success, researchers presenting statistics, board members discussing future expansions. But the audience really came alive when Grace took the podium, her small figure standing straight and proud. "A year ago," she began, "I learned that being sick doesn't just happen to you. It happens to everyone who loves you." Her clear voice carried across the garden. "But I also learned that healing is the same way. When one person gets better, it helps everyone around them grow too." She gestured to the garden surrounding them. "In this garden, we plant flowers that help each other. The tall sunflowers provide shade for smaller plants. The herbs attract helpful insects. Every flower has its purpose, just like every person has their way of helping others heal." Grace paused, reaching for something under the podium. "This morning I finished a very special puzzle. It took me all year to make it piece by piece." She held up a large frame containing an intricate mosaic of photographs, drawings, and pressed flowers. "This is everyone who helped me get better. Doctors, nurses, teachers, friends. But most importantly, It shows how helping me get better helped them discover new ways to help others. Alexander felt tears prick his eyes as Grace continued. My Aunt Sarah, who I never met, got sick a long time ago. Back then, doctors didn't know how to help her the way they helped me. But because of her, my daddy made sure I got the best care possible. And now, because of what we learned helping me, doctors can help other children better. She touched the sunflower charm on her medical alert bracelet. Sometimes the best flowers grow from the hardest times. That's what my garden teaches us. Every challenge we face can become a gift we give to others. The audience sat spellbound as this young girl, wise beyond her years, shared insights that many adults struggled to grasp. In the front row, Angela Thompson wiped tears from her eyes, her weekly visits with Grace having evolved into a relationship built on new understanding and respect. So today, Grace concluded, we're not just celebrating that I got better. We're celebrating everyone who helped make it happen, and all the people who will be helped because of what we learned together. She looked directly at Alexander. My daddy always says that true success isn't about what you gain, but about what you give. This garden is our way of giving back, a little bit of hope growing stronger every day. The applause was thunderous, but Alexander barely heard it. He was too focused on the miracle before him, not just the physical healing, but the profound wisdom and compassion that had bloomed in his daughter's heart. As Grace returned to his side, clutching her puzzle mosaic, she whispered, "Did I surprise you?" Alexander hugged her close, remembering a frightened little girl in a hospital playroom, carefully coloring sunflowers. Every day, sweetheart. Every single day. The evening after the ceremony found Alexander in his home office, surrounded by the gentle sounds of a spring night. Through the open window, he could hear Grace in the backyard garden, explaining to Emily about the new butterfly bushes they'd planted that weekend. His desk, once dominated by corporate reports, now held a different kind of documentation. The latest data from the Grace Initiative showed remarkable success rates across multiple treatment centers. What had begun as one little girl's unique response to treatment had blossomed into a revolutionary approach to pediatric care. A knock at his door revealed William holding 2 cups of coffee. "Thought you might need this," his brother said, settling into a chair. "It's been quite a day." "Quite a year," Alexander corrected, accepting the coffee gratefully. "Remember when we thought you were crazy, taking on Drake, risking everything, for a child you barely knew?" William smiled ruefully. "I've never been happier to be proven wrong." Through the window, Grace's laughter floated up. She and Emily had discovered a nest of baby birds in one of her garden trees. The sound was precious to Alexander, in a way no business success had ever been. The board meeting went well. William continued. "The expansion plans for the initiative are approved. We're breaking ground on 3 new research centers next month." "And Drake?" "Still fighting the SEC charges, but it doesn't matter anymore. What we're building now is bigger than any corporate takeover." Alexander nodded, picking up Grace's puzzle mosaic from his desk. She had insisted he display it in his office, where important things belong. Looking at it now, he saw not just a collection of memories, but a map of transformation. "You know what Grace asked me this morning?" he said quietly. She wanted to know if Sarah would be proud of her garden. Not just the flowers, but what it represents: hope growing from loss, healing shared with others. "What did you tell her?" "That Sarah would be more than proud. She would understand that sometimes the greatest gifts come from our deepest wounds." Soft tap at the door interrupted them. Grace stood there in her gardening clothes, dirt smudged on her cheek, holding something behind her back. "Daddy, Emily and I found something amazing." She brought out her hands, revealing a small pot containing a tiny sunflower sprout. But this one was different. Where most sunflowers grew as single stalks, this seedling had split, producing 2 distinct stems from the same root. "Look," she exclaimed, "it's like twins. Emily says it's rare, but sometimes seeds grow differently than expected. Can we plant it in the school garden? I want to show my class how being different can be special." Alexander exchanged glances with William, both men thinking of another little girl who had taught them similar lessons long ago. Of course we can, sweetheart. Why don't you tell Uncle Will your ideas for where to plant it? As Grace excitedly explained her plans to William, Alexander stood and walked to the window. The setting sun painted the sky in shades of orange and pink, remarkably similar to the day he'd first met Grace. Back then, he had been the ice king of Wall Street, measuring success in stock prices and merger deals. Now, success meant something entirely different. It was measured in his daughter's laughter, in the lives touched by the Grace Initiative, in gardens planted and lessons shared. The empire he had built hadn't been destroyed. It had been transformed just as he had been transformed by the love of a little girl who saw beauty in broken things and hope in hard places. Grace's voice drew his attention back to the room. "Daddy, Emily says it's time for our evening puzzle. Want to join us?" Alexander looked at his desk, at the papers documenting the initiative's global impact, at the mosaic of memories Grace had created, at the unique sunflower seedling representing nature's capacity for surprise and adaptation. "Wouldn't miss. Fight for the world," he replied, following his daughter down to their family room where a new puzzle waited to be solved. Because that's what life was, he had learned, a constant puzzle of challenges and choices, of pieces that seemed broken, but fit perfectly in unexpected places. And sometimes, the most beautiful pictures emerged from the most difficult patterns, just as the strongest flowers grew from the hardest soil. In the garden outside, Grace's sunflowers turned their faces to catch the last rays of sun, standing tall and proud, testament to a journey that had begun with one man's choice to open his heart and one little girl's courage to keep reaching for the light, no matter how dark the shadows seemed. The autumn air was crisp as Alexander stood at the podium in Hope's Children's Hospital's newly renovated auditorium. 2 years had passed since he first walked these halls, yet the memories remained vivid. The audience before him included medical professionals, corporate leaders, and most importantly, families whose lives had been touched by the Grace Initiative. "When I first entered this hospital," he began, "I was a different man. I thought I understood success, power, and what it meant to leave a legacy. I couldn't have been more wrong." In the front row, Grace sat between Emily and Angela, her school uniform, replaced today by a dress decorated with small embroidered sunflowers. At 12 years old, she had grown taller, but her eyes still held that same mixture of wisdom and wonder that had first captured his heart. The Sarah Grace Protocol has now been implemented in 273 hospitals worldwide, Alexander continued. But numbers don't tell the real story. The real story is in the faces I see before me today. The children who have found hope, the families who have found strength, and the medical community that has found a new way forward. He gestured to the wall behind him, where a massive mural depicted a garden of sunflowers, each bloom containing a photograph of a child helped by the protocol. At the center was a special flower, holding a picture of Sarah at age 8, her smile echoing in the faces of all those who had come after. Today, we're not just celebrating success rates and medical breakthroughs, we're celebrating transformation. The transformation of treatment approaches, yes, but more importantly, the transformation of hearts and minds. Grace caught his eye and gave him a subtle thumbs up. She had helped him practice this speech, insisting that he speak from his heart, not his business brain. Pierce Industries has undergone its own transformation, he acknowledged. What was once a corporation focused solely on profit has become a pioneer in medical research and accessible care. The Grace Initiative isn't just a program, it's a promise that no family will face these challenges alone, that every child deserves not just treatment, but understanding, hope, and love. In the audience, William nodded approvingly. Under his leadership as CEO, Pierce Industries had become a different kind of powerhouse, one that measured success in lives improved rather than mere dollars earned. But perhaps the most profound transformation, Alexander continued, his voice softening, has been personal. A little girl with a love for puzzles and sunflowers taught me that true strength isn't found in boardrooms or bank accounts. It's found in the courage to open your heart, even when it's scared. In the wisdom to see that our greatest challenges can become our greatest gifts to others. He paused, looking at Grace, who was now holding both Emily's and Angela's hands. Their unlikely family unit had evolved into something beautiful and strong, like one of Grace's beloved garden experiments. 2 years ago, I thought I was saving a child. Instead, that child saved me. She showed me that love isn't a limited resource to be hoarded, but a force that grows stronger the more it's shared. That healing isn't just about medicine, it's about connection, understanding, and the courage to keep reaching for the light. The room was silent, every person present feeling the weight and truth of his words. In the back, Dr. Matthews stood with his team, their faces reflecting pride in how far their groundbreaking treatment had come. So today, as we announce the next phase of the Grace Initiative, a worldwide network of healing gardens designed to support both medical and emotional recovery, I want to share something my daughter told me recently. He smiled at Grace, who sat up straighter, recognizing her words. She said, "Daddy, do you know why sunflowers follow the sun? It's because they know that even on cloudy days, the light is still there. They just have to keep believing and keep reaching." That wisdom from a child who has faced more challenges than most adults perfectly captures what we're building here. Alexander gestured to the doors, where volunteers were preparing to lead tours of the hospital's new facilities, including its rooftop healing garden modeled after Grace's original design. Every garden we plant, every protocol we implement, every family we support is a seed of hope. And like my daughter's beloved sunflowers, these seeds will grow, multiply, and create something beautiful from even the hardest soil. Grace was beaming now, her face glowing with pride and love. She had come so far from that first day in the playroom, yet in many ways she was still the same. A child who saw beauty in broken things and possibility in every challenge. As we move forward with these new initiatives, Alexander concluded, let us remember that the greatest transformations often come from the most unexpected sources, and that sometimes it takes a child's heart to teach us what really matters in life. The applause that followed was thunderous, but Alexander barely heard it. His eyes were fixed on his daughter, who was already pulling out her notebook, the one where she sketched her endless garden designs. Even now, in the midst of celebration, she was planning the next seed to plant, the next life to touch, the next heart to heal. The evening after the announcement found Grace and Alexander in their favorite spot, the original rooftop garden where their journey had begun. The space had evolved over time, becoming a template for healing gardens worldwide, but it still held their special memories. "Look, Daddy," Grace said, pointing to a particular sunflower. "This one grew even taller than last year's. Emily says it's because the soil gets better every season." Alexander watched his daughter move through the garden with practiced ease, checking on each plant with gentle touches. She had grown too, not just in height but in presence. Her medical experiences had given her an old soul's wisdom, but her heart remained wonderfully childlike in its capacity for joy and wonder. "The new gardens will help so many people," she continued, settling onto their favorite bench. "Sophie's mum told me that having the garden at school helped Sophie understand about her brother's treatments better than any of the doctor's explanations." Sophie, Grace's first friend at Greenwich Academy, had recently faced her own family medical challenge when her younger brother was diagnosed with a rare condition. The school garden had become a place of solace and understanding for many students dealing with similar situations. "You've started quite a movement," Alexander smiled. "The Healing Garden Network is being studied by medical schools now. They're calling it horticultural therapy." Grace wrinkled her nose at the technical term. "I just call it growing hope," she said simply, "like how you grew hope in me when I was sick." The setting sun painted the sky in brilliant colors, reminding Alexander of other sunsets they had watched from this spot. During treatment sessions, after difficult days, celebrating small victories. Each memory was a piece of their shared puzzle, creating a picture more beautiful than he could have imagined. "Daddy," Grace's voice was thoughtful, "do you ever wonder what would have happened if you hadn't come to the hospital that day, if you hadn't seen me coloring?" Alexander considered the question carefully. "I think some things are meant to be, sweetheart, like your special sunflower that grew 2 stems, Sometimes life surprises us in the most wonderful ways. She nodded, understanding. Like how Mum got better too. Different better than me, but still better. Angela's transformation had been its own kind of miracle. Through therapy and honest self-reflection, she had found her way back to health, becoming someone who could truly support her daughter while respecting the bonds Grace had formed with her new family. The garden taught me something important, Grace continued, pulling out her ever-present notebook. Everything has its season. Some flowers bloom early, some late. Some need lots of sun, others grow better in shade, but they all have their place, their purpose. She opened the notebook, revealing her latest design, a new layout for the garden. Network's central location. The sketch showed an intricate pattern of paths and plantings, with spaces for reflection, healing, and connection. See these areas? She pointed to small circles scattered throughout the design. They're for puzzle tables, because sometimes people need to put pieces together while they're figuring things out. And these spots here are for families to sit together, like we did. Alexander studied the design, impressed by its thoughtful integration of all they had, learned about healing, both physical and emotional. It's beautiful, sweetheart, just like its designer. Grace leaned against him, her head resting on his shoulder like she used to do during treatment sessions. We should add a special section, she said quietly, for Aunt Sarah, because even though she's not here, she helped us find each other. I think that's perfect, Alexander agreed, feeling the familiar mix of grief and gratitude that thoughts of his sister now brought. She would have loved seeing all of this, especially how you've helped change the way people think about healing. The garden had grown quiet as evening approached, but it was filled with the peaceful sounds of nature, gentle breezes rustling leaves, bees making their final rounds, birds settling in for the night. This was what they had created together, not just a place of healing, but a testament to the power of love to transform pain into purpose. You know what, Daddy? Grace said, closing her notebook. I think the best gardens are like the best families. They keep growing, changing, and making room for new flowers to bloom. Alexander hugged his daughter close, marveling at the wisdom that could come from such a young heart. The little girl he had met in a hospital playroom had grown into something extraordinary, a healer in her own right, using her experience to help others find their way through dark times. As the last rays of sun caught the tops of the sunflowers, setting their golden petals ablaze, Alexander thought about transformation. His journey from Ice King to father, Grace's path from patient to pioneer, their shared evolution from strangers to family. Each change had been like a seed planted in fertile soil, growing into something more beautiful than they could have imagined. The garden would continue to grow, touching more lives and healing more hearts. But its true magic would always be here, in these quiet moments between a father and daughter who had found each other against all odds, and in doing so, had discovered the greatest truth of all. That love, like hope, was a garden that bloomed, eternal. 5 years had passed since that first day in Hope's Children's Hospital, and the changes were evident everywhere Alexander looked. The Pierce Medical Research Center, a gleaming complex of buildings surrounded by healing gardens, stood as a testament to how far they had come. Today was special. The center was hosting its first international conference on integrated healing approaches, and Grace had been asked to be the keynote speaker. At 15, she had grown into a poised young woman, though she still carried her beloved puzzle notebook and wore her sunflower charm. Nervous? Alexander asked, finding her in the main garden where she often went to think. A little, she admitted, touching a sunflower petal. It's different speaking to doctors and researchers. What if they don't take me seriously because I'm young? Alexander sat beside her on the garden bench, a replica of their favorite spot from the hospital rooftop. Do you remember what you told that first group of doctors when they asked about your recovery? Grace smiled. That healing is like a puzzle. Every piece matters, even the ones that don't seem to fit at first. Exactly. And now that wisdom is helping children around the world, the Sarah Grace Protocol had evolved beyond its medical origins, becoming a comprehensive approach to pediatric care that integrated traditional treatment with emotional and psychological support. The healing gardens were now a standard feature in hospitals across the globe, each one unique but all, following the principles Grace had discovered through her own journey. "I visited the new children's ward yesterday," Grace said, pulling out her notebook. "There was a little girl there, about 6 years old, the same age I was. She was scared about starting treatment, so I showed her how to plant sunflower seeds." Alexander watched as she sketched while she talked, a habit she had developed over the years. Her drawings now filled dozens of notebooks, each one documenting another step in their ongoing journey. "I told her about how flowers need both sunshine and rain to grow strong," Grace continued. "Just like people need both good days and hard days to grow stronger." She got it right away. Sometimes children understand these things better than adults. The garden around them hummed with life. Patients and families walking the paths, medical students studying in quiet corners, researchers discussing cases over coffee. What had started as one little girl's healing space had grown into a movement that was revolutionizing how the world approached medical care. "Did I tell you what Dr. Matthews said yesterday?" Grace looked up from her sketch. "They're finding that patients who participate in the garden program show significantly better recovery rates. He says it's changing everything they thought they knew about the connection between physical and emotional healing." Alexander nodded, remembering the skepticism they had faced in the early days. Now, medical journals regularly published studies about the Grace effect, the measurable impact of integrated healing approaches on patient outcomes. "Your Aunt Sarah would be so proud," he said softly. "Not just of the protocol that bears her name, but of how you've taken your own experience and used it to light the way for others." Grace was quiet for a moment, adding final touches to her sketch. It showed a new addition she was planning for the garden, a special area where patients could create their own puzzle art, combining healing and creativity in ways that spoke to her own journey. "Sometimes I think about that first day," she said finally. "When you saw me coloring in the hospital playroom, did you know then that everything would change?" Alexander thought back to that moment, the lost, lonely man he had been, thinking he understood what power and success meant. "I knew something was changing," he answered honestly. "I just didn't realize it was me." The conference center was filling up now. They could see people gathering through the garden's glass walls. Among them were familiar faces. Emily, now, the director of patient support services; William, who had transformed Pierce Industries into a leader in medical innovation; Angela, who had found her own path to healing and now counseled other parents facing similar challenges. "Ready?" Alexander asked as Grace stood, straightening her presentation notes. She looked around the garden one last time, at the sunflowers standing tall against the morning sky, at the paths winding through beds of healing herbs and fragrant flowers, at the families finding hope and strength in this space she had helped create. "You know what, Daddy?" She smiled, her eyes shining with the same determination he had first seen in that hospital playroom. "I think I've been ready for this my whole life." As they walked together toward the conference center, Alexander realized that every step of their journey, from that first meeting to this moment, had been leading them here. Not to an ending, but to a new beginning, another piece in the ever-growing puzzle of their shared legacy. The conference hall fell silent as Grace took the podium, her presence somehow filling the vast space despite her youth. Alexander sat in the front row, watching his daughter prepare to share their story with the world. "When I was 6 years old," she began, her clear voice carrying to every corner of the room, "I learned something profound about healing. It wasn't from a doctor or a medical textbook. It was from a sunflower." She clicked to her first slide, a photograph of that original hospital rooftop garden. "This garden taught me that healing isn't just about medicine. It's about finding light in dark places, about reaching up when everything seems to be pulling you down, and about helping others grow even when you're struggling to grow yourself." The audience, doctors, researchers, and healthcare providers from around the world, leaned forward, captured by the wisdom in her young voice. "The Sarah," Grace Protocol isn't just a medical treatment, she continued. It's a reminder that every patient is like a seed, containing unlimited potential for growth and healing. Our job isn't just to treat the illness, it's to provide the right conditions for that potential to bloom. She shared stories from the past 5 years. Children who had found hope in garden soil, families who had healed together while planting flowers, medical breakthroughs that had come from understanding the connection between emotional and physical healing. But the most important lesson, she said, turning to a new slide showing her father's original office, with its view of the New York skyline, came from watching transformation in action. My father was known as the Ice King of Wall Street. He built an empire of steel and glass. But when love called him to build something different, something that couldn't be measured in stock prices or profit margins, he showed me that the strongest people are those who are brave enough to change. Alexander felt tears prick his eyes. As Grace continued, the Grace Initiative isn't about one little girl's recovery. It's about what happens when we open our hearts to possibilities, when we see challenges as opportunities to help others, when we understand that true healing touches not just the body but the soul. The final slide appeared, a split screen showing Grace at 6, small and fragile in her hospital bed, beside a current photo of her in the garden, strong and vibrant. Every day people ask me if I'm afraid the cancer will come back. The truth is, what happened to me will always be part of who I am, but it's not my whole story. She touched her sunflower charm, a gesture Alexander recognized as her way of gathering strength. My story is about how love can transform fear into hope, how one person's faith can help another person bloom, how a garden can grow from the hardest soil when we nurture it together. Grace's voice grew stronger as she reached her conclusion. Today, as we discuss new medical protocols and treatment approaches, I challenge you to remember this: every patient in your care is someone's whole world. Every treatment plan is a seed of hope. Every moment of healing is an opportunity to create something beautiful from something difficult. The standing ovation that followed lasted several minutes. Alexander watched as his daughter accepted the applause with grace, her face glowing with the joy of someone who had found their true purpose. Later, in the garden where their story had begun, father and daughter stood together watching the sunset. The Sarah Grace Protocol had transformed countless lives, but perhaps its greatest miracle was the bond it had created between them, a love that had grown from the most unexpected circumstances into something extraordinary. "You know what, Daddy?" Grace said, sketching a new garden design in her ever-present notebook. "I finally figured out why sunflowers are so special." "Why's that, sweetheart?" "Because they show us that even after the darkest night, we can still turn our faces to the light. And when we do that together, we help others find their way too." Alexander hugged his daughter close, marveling at how their journey had come full circle. The Ice King's empire hadn't crumbled. It had transformed into something far more precious. A legacy not of power or wealth, but of healing, hope, and the endless capacity of love to change lives. As the last rays of sun caught the tops of the sunflowers, setting their petals ablaze with golden light, Alexander knew that their story would continue to grow and bloom, touching lives in ways they had never imagined. Because true love, like the gardens they had planted together, was forever blooming, forever reaching toward the light, forever creating beauty from life's most challenging moments. And in that beauty lay the greatest truth of all, that sometimes the most precious gifts come disguised as our greatest challenges, waiting for love to help them bloom.